Right guys, in this video we're going to offer you 4 ring muscle up turnover progressions that are going to be performed in the low rings to help you master the turnover of your kipping ring muscle up. So let's jump straight in. Drill number 1 is going to be a foot assisted ring turnover. Now the intent of this drill is just to help you understand how to turn over aggressively and how do we transition the grip from an underhand grip to an overhand grip. So for the drill itself, feet under the rings, we want to have the rings low enough so we can bend forward to get into your dip position. From there, we're going to come to this low hanging position and then snap into your dip. Now, there's 2 key things we want from this drill. Number 1, you have to be really aggressive. So it's kind of like we're throwing a headbutt, or we're doing a really fast sit-up. So we want to take our gaze from looking at the corner of the room to our gaze looking at the floor slightly in front. 2, and this is really important, we want to modify the grip that we use. So whenever we're swinging off the rings on the actual high rings, we have our knuckles pointing towards the roof. But if we fail to loosen our grip for the turnover, this is where we'll see a lot of athletes get stuck like this. Because in a kipping ring muscle up, you have to become weightless to then open our hands slightly to then adjust into this grip with our fist down. So a lot of the times when people are learning their first ring muscle up, we'll find that they keep their grip too tight, either on one side or both, and it looks like this. And they find they just can't get over the rings. And it's because they held on too tight. Now there's a whole host of reasons why they're holding on too tight, but this drill, we're just trying to focus on that weightless and that change of grip. Once we have this, we're then going to move into some timing drills and coordination drills when it comes to the sequencing of your leg swing, your hip drive, and then your turnover. If your timing in this isn't correct, you're going to be very inefficient in your ring muscle up, or you simply won't get that first turnover. So this is going to be foot assisted again. We're going to have our hips underneath the rings. We're going to have one foot on the floor and the other leg straight. Now the sequence of your ring muscle up, we should see your toes, we should thrust our hips, and then we should pull over the rings. So full speed. Toes, hips, turn over. So we recommend doing this drill slow to begin with, understanding that hip close, hip opening, and then once we have that mastered, we add in that snappy turnover. Now we can take this one step further. Once we have the basics dialed in, we can increase the challenge of this drill by using a band. So we're going to get a band on the rings, and this now means that we're going to use both legs to turn over. So you can have your butt on the floor, or you can have yourself slightly higher to make this easier. And the same sequence is going to happen. We're going to go toes, hips, turn over. Now, sometimes people struggle with this drill because whenever they open their hips, they don't pull at the same time. So if you watch me one more time, toes, hips, and pull. If I was to open my hips and not pull with my arms, and it's a little bit delayed, you'll find that whenever I'm going through that hip drive, I'm leaning back too much. And that's not what we want to see. Once we open our hips and shoulders should rise upward. So if you're at this stage of the journey where you can do the foot assisted drill, but you struggle with a band drill, sometimes it's good to break it down a little bit further and practice hips to rings before we add in the turnover element. So we can go toes, hips, pull. And you'll notice whenever I pull, my shoulders begin to rise towards the roof, and I'll naturally then want to transition over the rings. Okay, so we need to break this down a little bit further. We can do that. Once we have all this mastered, it's now time to practice this same drill without a band. Now this is quite advanced, but this is a really useful tool for the more advanced athlete who can do ring muscle ups, but they find whenever they turn over the rings, they often leave their feet in front of the body, and it makes it just that little bit harder to get a really smooth turnover. So in this drill, we're going to be on the floor, we're going to be leaning back to create tension on the rings. We want our hips directly underneath the rings. And we're going to rise our toes up and then do a ring muscle up. So there's a few focus points here. Because we don't have that band, we have to be super aggressive with the hip extension and the turnover. But more importantly, we have no choice but to pull our feet back in order to achieve that turnover. And that's essentially what we want to see in your kip and ring muscle up. So just to give an example of a bad rep, if I fail to pull my feet back as I turn over, watch how difficult this becomes. So you can see that's a real big challenge because there's too much of my body weight still in front of the rings. So once we initiate the pull, we pull those feet back fast. So guys, that is our very simple progression for your kip and ring muscle up turnover on the low rings. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop a comment below, and best of luck with your muscle up journey.